This PowerPoint presentation is about the Behavior Decision Tree, and this is a document that has been put out by the WestEd Corporation for the PITC training, the Program for Infant Toddler Caregivers, and they've given permission for people to use this document in educational settings. I really like talking about this document and sharing it with all of my classes because I think that it gives a very good framework for trying to understand why is a child doing what they're doing and why is behavior happening. Often there's many different reasons as to why a child is acting a particular way, and it's the adults or the parents' responsibility to be able to be good investigators to try and figure out what's happening with a child and why they're acting the way they are. This document has 5 possible causes to consider when looking at child's behavior. One is a developmental stage, another one is an individual difference, another is the environment causes the behavior, the next is that a child is needing to learn something, and the last is that the behavior is from an unmet emotional need. Now, these 5 categories are not totally inclusive. There could be something else going on, but I think that this is a very good jumping off point. And also, keep in mind, even though this document is coming from the perspective of looking at infants and toddlers, it actually can be applied not only to older children, but in some respects to anybody, really, because these factors influence all of us. Now, on every page, and there's 5 of them, it's going to say the first possible cause or the second, so forth and so on. Why is this happening? How can I tell? And what should I do? So it's going to give some suggestions about ways to approach trying to figure out, again, why the behavior is happening. The first is the developmental stage. So why is this happening? Well, a 2-year-old who throws temper tantrums, a 1-year-old that is throwing everything off of a shelf, children that like to fill and dump containers. You know, why are these things happening? Well, sometimes it's a developmental stage. And possible causes, well, it's maturation. The behavior is part of a child's developmental stage. And the behavior is the child's practicing a necessary aspect of mastery and human development. We often know that 2-year-olds often throw temper tantrums because they haven't learned yet how to regulate their emotions and their behaviors. So how can you tell maybe that it's a developmental stage? Well, you've read about it in books. You've seen children of the same age acting the same way. Maybe you actually remember doing it yourself. So do always reflect on the sense of the child's expectations, the sense of the relationship with the child that you have, and the child's sense of self. So where they are developmentally is really important. We also know that young infants and toddlers put everything in their mouths. They pick something up and they put it in their mouths. So that very much is clearly a developmental stage. So what should you do? Well, you can relax. You can tolerate it, you can channel it, and you can stop it. Yes, if the behavior is disruptive or dangerous, absolutely step in and stop the behavior. So again, it's going to depend upon the child, and it's going to depend upon your relationship and what you know about what the child's experiencing. But certainly one might be the developmental stage. The next possible cause in this document is individual differences. And this is also a term that's used when we talk about temperament. So every child, even in a family, is very different in how they approach new situations, new people. Some children are very active. Other children move in a more methodic kind of way. Some children are get overwhelmed more easily. So again, these are individual differences that might impact development. So why is this happening? Well, possible causes with individual differences is not all children of a certain age act the same way. Temperamental or constitutional qualities might be responsible for their behavior, And all children experience the world according to their unique physiology. So how can you tell? Well, it's not solely a developmental stage. In other words, you see these temperamental differences, the way the child approaches the world from a very early age. You are getting to really know the child, so you have some information about how the child responds in their environment from birth. And you've read about temperament, sensory, motor capacities, the effects of drug exposure, medical kinds of issues that might be going on. So in other words, those things also might impact the development and the expression of individual differences. So what should you do? Well, you want to get to know the individual child really well. You want to observe and identify their unique style of how they approach the world. You want to adapt your expectations in your interactions. If you're taking a child to a birthday party and you know that that child gets very overwhelmed in large groups, lots of noise, then you want to prepare for that. At some point, you might want to take the child aside and just have some quiet time with them. You want to offer options that allow for and appreciate the child's unique expression and response to the world. And then you want to keep asking questions, not only of the parent, but also maybe of yourself and your experience of that child, of the attributes that you see in the child and possible explanations as to why behavior is happening. Another example might be that if you're taking the child to a new child care center or a new play group, and maybe you're actually even going to be staying at this new play group and not leaving the child, but the child is a little apprehensive, that the child tends to need more time to adjust, that you want to allow that child to move into the play group and begin to interact when the timing is right for them. The next possible cause of behavior is the environment. So why is this happening? Well, specific environments cause different kinds of behavior issues. It's not uncommon if you take a child to the doctor that as soon as they walk in the doctor's office, they remember that they were here not too long ago and it wasn't real pleasant. So then they might start crying as you're entering into the building. So some general environments that you want to pay attention to that might influence behavior certainly are going to be the home environment, family situation, lifestyle, culture, and other settings. I think that toy stores, stores or places where are very enticing, lots of color, lots of things to get your hands on when you're a young child, can be very, very difficult to be in. So, and frankly, sometimes they're set up that way so that there is a temper tantrum and that the parent will end up buying something in order to get a child to calm down. So how do you know that it might be in the environment? Well, the behavior is not due to a developmental stage or individual difference. In child care settings, maybe similar children act the same way. And also, there might be different expectations between a home and a child care setting. And also, there's a sudden change in behavior, either whether when the child goes home, they become more relaxed, or when they're out in different environments, their behavior changes. And it's something that is very clearly identified. So what do you want to do? Well, specifically in child care centers or other places, you want to do something. You want to get more information. You don't want to focus in on the child, and you want to adapt your expectations. So if you're taking the child into a place where there is going to be a lot of breakable things, where they're not going to be able to or be allowed to touch something, to climb on something, to get into something, and if the adults around are always saying, don't go near that, don't touch that, don't climb on that, get down from there. If it's a very negative situation, eventually that's going to wear on anybody. So again, paying attention to the environments in which children spend most of their time. At home, clearly there should be the place where the child's spending most of their time should be very child-friendly. And as I mentioned before, in another lecture, is that remember that if you have shelves and equipment in the child's playroom, that you want to have it mounted to the wall so that if they do go climbing the bookshelf or do pull on it, that it's not going to fall on them. Another possibility is that the child doesn't know something, but they're ready to learn. So why is this happening? Well, children are young and they don't come in always knowing exactly what's going to happen. So how do you know? Well, once again, the behavior is not due to developmental stage, individual difference, or the environment, but the child's young and inexperienced. And there's a lot of new and unfamiliar situations. And so when they're facing a new situation, a new task, it's really important to teach a new skill, to explain over and over, to give reason, to give encouragement, to be patient, and to offer support and help. Remember, just because we tell a child something once doesn't mean that they remember it or that they apply it. Think about ourselves. We often need instructions numerous times, and we need numerous times to practice new things ourselves. An example might be that if a child has never been to a wedding, is to let them know what's going to be happening during the day. I had the experience of being with a family where they had a 6-year-old, and the 6-year-old had never been to the wedding. So the mother did explain the process first of what they were going to be doing in the morning, and then after the ceremony, they were going to get in their car and they were going to go to the reception, and the reception is like a party. And then she explained that things that might be happening at the reception. There might be music, there's going to be food, there will be some different kinds of activities and things. And so that the child had an idea of what to expect as the day unfolded. At the reception, I was put at the table with the child and the family, and the child was confused he said, there's all these waiters, but nobody's brought me a menu. And the mother tried to explain that she had already ordered for him in the invitation, and he didn't really understand what the invitation was, and he really didn't understand why the food was ordered ahead of time before he had seen a menu. And so again, there's always something new to learn. And so the mother called the waiter over, explained the situation, and the waiter caught on immediately and was able to be very helpful in helping the child understand that the food was coming very soon, and to kind of put him at ease. The last possible cause is an unmet emotional need. Think about the times when you feel anxious, apprehensive, fearful, unsure, confused, that, our behavior comes out in ways in which we might become more defensive or very nervous about certain things. So with young children, the same thing happens. So why is this happening? Well, maybe a child's missed out on something. Instead of the emotional need going away when we have it, when we don't feel safe and secure, we're going to be seeking out ways, and the child does the same things to feel safe and secure. So once again, how we can tell is that it isn't about development, but the child's not acting their age. Often when children are feeling stressed, scared, insecure, anxious, they do regress to a younger behavior. So that's not uncommon. The behaviors everywhere and always, and the behaviors even when challenged or stopped keeps popping up. So the anxiety, the fear, the separation anxiety, or whatever it happens to be, keeps popping back up. So when you know it's an emotional need, you want to do something. You want to respond with deeds, not words, giving, not withholding, and through support, not punishing. Often, when children are having unmet emotional needs, it comes out in their behavior. They become very disruptive, they become aggressive, they can hit, they can throw temper tantrums, and often that leads to a child getting into trouble or being put on a timeout or something to that effect. Obviously, if the behavior is disruptive or dangerous, you want to stop it, and you want to use a lot of quiet firmness and patience. You want to sit with the child and help them calm down. And this might be a time when parents can benefit from some professional support from either friends, family, or a professional. This can be difficult to figure out sometimes.